topic at hand today, I want to talk about the ongoing investigation by the NYPD related to the letter bombs that have been sent to several locations in New York City, and obviously we know 2 locations around the country. So today at approximately 6:30 a.m., the NYPD bomb squad removed a device from the offices of Robert De Niro in the Tribeca neighborhood. Want to emphasize and thank everybody at the NYPD who's doing an outstanding job. The device was removed successfully. Thank God there were no injuries. The really quick-witted work of a security guard there at that facility in Tribeca is to thanks for the fact that nothing happened and no harm was done to anyone. But that device, very similar to the other devices that have been located in the last 48 hours. And it all appears to be from the same sender. That investigation is ongoing. Now, right now, that specific device has been taken to the bomb squad facility at Rodman's Neck, and obviously will be analyzed by the NYPD working with FBI and our other federal partners. This is clearly an effort to terrorize people politically, to choose people for political purposes and attack them because of their beliefs. That is the kind of thing we have seen before in this city, and we reject it, and we will not be intimidated by it. I was very struck by how New Yorkers showed their resiliency yesterday, showed their unwillingness to bend in the face of terror, kept going about their business. Everyone knew about what was happening, but they refused to let anyone terrorize them. And that is something that all New Yorkers should be proud of. Also, we know we have the finest police force anywhere in the world, and they have done an outstanding job protecting us. But we have to help the NYPD, and I want to really emphasize, it's true here, it's true all over the country, that everyday people, excuse me, everyday people can play an incredibly important role helping law enforcement by getting any information you have on who may be involved in this plot to law enforcement, and by being very vigilant about any packages that come in. The pattern of these packages has been extraordinarily consistent, but that does not mean that if something comes in that looks a little different, people shouldn't take it seriously if it's suspicious to them. So we need people to use their common sense. If a package looks suspicious, if there's any kind of chemical smell, any wiring showing any indication of something out of the ordinary, don't open the package. Alert the NYPD immediately. Call 911. Much better to be safe than sorry in these situations. The question on everyone's mind, of course, is how long will this go on? It's important for people to recognize that until a full investigation takes place, we can't tell you how long this will go exactly. We have to be ready for any eventuality. It might be hours, it might be days, it might be weeks. The vigilance we need to show in the meantime is what has to be consistent. We're going to be updating people in the next few hours. There will be a press conference at One Police Plaza, so we'll have an opportunity there to get into detail about the latest on the investigation. But the bottom line here is, again, anybody who sees something suspicious or causes concern, call 911. Anybody who has information about the people who are behind these letter bombs, you can call our tip line, 1-888-NYC-SAFE. New Yorkers are showing that we will not be intimidated. And New Yorkers are showing the goodness and the decency that's true of this city and true of people all over this country. And this is ultimately, it's a very painful moment, it's a very frightening moment, but in the end, the goodness of everyday people is what's going to see us through this. I'm absolutely convinced of that. People helping each other out, people having each other's backs. That's how this city works. This is a city where 8.6 million people live in a practical kind of harmony that's extraordinary and something we should all be proud of. It's an example to the whole world. Nothing that's happened in the last day or two has changed that. We're going to keep being New Yorkers, and we're going to keep showing that we can get along with each other and we can make things work. Just a couple of words in Spanish. Esta mañana sacamos un dispositivo de las oficinas de Robert De Niro similar a los que hallamos ayer. Tenemos la mejor policía del mundo y los neoyorquinos deben continuar con sus vidas en paz. Si tienen información sobre este asunto, llamen de inmediato al 1-888-57-PISTA. So please, everyone, I'll just conclude on this, and then we'll go to talking about what we're here for today in Queens. But any information you have, share it with the NYPD. And as I said, in a few hours, we'll be having a press conference at One Police Plaza to update everyone on the details of the investigation. With that, let me now turn to Susan.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Susan Latham, and I'm a longtime resident of Jackson Heights in Queens. My husband and my teenage son and I live just a few blocks away from here. Elmhurst Hospital is our local community hospital, and over the years, I've had several reasons to come and visit the emergency room by myself, with my son, with elderly neighbors and friends. And we've always received excellent and compassionate care, and we really count ourselves lucky to have such a great resource in the neighborhood. So I wanted to just tell you a couple of instances when I've been here in the emergency room. About 4 years ago, I was doing my usual power walk that I do on the weekends with a friend, and on a Saturday morning, and I tripped and fell. And I wasn't exactly sure what I had done, but I knew it was serious because I was in a lot of pain and because I could not put any weight at all on my leg. So at that time, there were no urgent care centers in the neighborhood. It was a Saturday, so my doctor wasn't in the office, and I knew I couldn't wait until Monday to find out if I had done some real damage. So I came to the Elmhurst Hospital emergency room. And I sat there for several hours with lots of other people who had more serious conditions than I did. And eventually, when I got seen by a doctor, he was able to very quickly tell me that I had damaged my hamstring. So not exactly a horrible thing, but painful. And he gave me a pair of crutches, and I got some ibuprofen and a recommendation to go visit my doctor, when the doctor was open for follow-up care. So if there had been an urgent care facility in the neighborhood, obviously I could have gone there, not waited the hours in the emergency room, and it would have cost a lot less money for me and for the hospital. So another instance was this past summer. I have a 16-year-old son, and I came to the Elmhurst emergency room with him because he had a freak accident and punctured his big toe. We weren't sure with what, and we couldn't find what it was, but he had a little puncture wound. So we cleaned off his foot with some soap and water. And the next day, I checked with his doctor, and they said that he should get a tetanus shot. So we planned to take him to City MD, which is on Roosevelt and 73rd Street after work, because now there is an urgent care center in the neighborhood. But during the day, his toe began to swell and get very red, and so my husband took him earlier. So when City MD did an X-ray to see if there was anything still in his foot, they discovered that there was a sewing needle lodged completely in his toe. And I have the photo on my phone if anyone's interested in seeing it. It's an interesting X-ray. I have
Scary photo.
Yes. Yeah. So this is something clearly that they could not handle at City MD, so they said that they should go to the emergency room. So now my son, with this big sewing needle lodged in his big toe, and my husband walked the 10 or 12 blocks to Elmhurst Hospital because there was really no subway to get there for one stop. We waited a while. We saw a great doctor and a nurse, and they were able to remove the needle and give him a tetanus shot, and 6 or 7 hours later, we walked back home. So of course, if there had been an urgent care center at Elmhurst Hospital, then my son could have just walked across the hall to get to the ER instead of walking 10 or 12 blocks with a needle lodged in his toe. And in any case, he's completely fine now. We're really lucky to have Elmhurst Hospital so close by. And my family is really fortunate because we have health insurance and primary care doctors. But there are lots of people in the neighborhood who don't. They rely on the ER to treat them and their children when they get sick, sometimes with illnesses that could have been prevented if they had regular medical care. Which is why I was really delighted to hear that Elmhurst will now have its own urgent care center, which I understand will refer people to primary care doctors in the neighborhood. It's a really great and a really needed resource for this community. We still need urgent care sometimes, and we still need the emergency room sometimes, and now we're going to get to have both in the same facility in our local community hospital. So I really wanted to thank everybody who's involved in making this a reality, because it's a great resource for our community, and I know it's going to be a big success. And now it's my honor and my privilege to introduce Mayor Bill Deblasio, and thank you for your help in making it possible.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Susan, I want to give you a lot of credit, Susan. You have given us vivid examples of why this is so important. And thank you. I appreciate that you're a conscientious mom, and you dealt with a pretty challenging situation there with your son. But thank you for acknowledging the great work of everyone here at Elmhurst, and for being really involved in the community. And thank you for making clear to people why this is so important. Look, everybody, we all have this challenge in life. Something happens, and we're trying to figure out where to go to get the care we need. And every one of us has spent a whole long time in an emergency room. I can tell you many stories of my own. And the fact is, our emergency rooms carry a huge burden, see a huge number of people for matters small and really, really severe. But what it all adds up to is really long waits and a challenging environment. And up until now, there really haven't been the kind of options that people need. We believe that healthcare is a right. We believe that it is the job of our city government and all levels of government to make sure people get the healthcare they need, and to make sure it's convenient, and to make sure it's as fast as possible. And the idea of getting decent treatment, fast treatment, shouldn't be a luxury. It should be something that people know is part of their everyday lives. That's why this is such an important development and such a step forward for health and hospitals. To pick up on the examples that Susan gave, everyday things that happen, maybe not quite as dramatic as the toe example, but like your other example from your walk, or you sprain an ankle, you have a fever, you in the kitchen working with a kitchen knife and cut something. These are the kinds of reasons that people go to the emergency room, particularly in evening hours and overnight hours. But what they're confronted with often, again, is a very long wait before they get the care that they need. Good people here at Health and Hospitals have been trying to come up with a solution to that, and they did look at the example of the private urgent care centers, and they said, wait a minute, we in the public sector can do that as well, and we can do it in a way that in some ways is even better, because we can put the urgent care right next to the emergency capacity and be able to draw upon whichever one is needed in each case. So this is going to respond to about the 70%, the estimate is about 70% of emergency room visits are for the kinds of things that actually could be handled by an urgent care facility, like the one that we just toured a few minutes ago. Well, right now, when everyone has only the choice of the emergency room, that adds to the waits for everyone. That means a lot of times that people are getting a more costly form of treatment than they need. When you separate the two ideas and you say, we're going to have urgent care and we're going to have an emergency room, and make sure people go to the right one for what they need, it makes things faster for everyone. It also saves a lot of money for everyone involved. As you said, you paid more than you should have because you had only one choice. This is going to be a way to save money for everyday New Yorkers and, of course, for our public health care system so that we can serve more people. We know that if people come into an urgent care facility and get help quickly, it's going to encourage them to get help when they need it. Unfortunately, the average for an emergency room is over 5 hours. That doesn't encourage people to come in. If it's something really horrible, they will. But a lot of people try and resist going for the care they need because they hate the idea of the long wait on the hard plastic chair. And we want people to get care. We want them to get care as quickly as possible. That's how you stop things from getting worse. So now that people can think about a place where the goal is to get people in and out within an hour, that's going to encourage people to get the care they need in the right setting. This is going to be one of three facilities, three new ExpressCare clinics for the city of New York, and in three of our currently busiest emergency rooms. Again, we think this is going to take a lot of pressure off those emergency rooms, which will be a great thing. Here in Elmhurst will be one. There will also be at Lincoln and Jacoby. That's the first three, but over time we will have facilities in all 11 of our inpatient hospitals. Look, the idea here is to make sure people get the care they need when they need it. We believe this will reach tens of thousands of New Yorkers and make their lives better. And we also, as is always the case with health and hospitals, we will see all patients. No one will be turned away, something we really believe in. If someone does not have insurance, they'll be offered payment plans, they'll be offered financial counseling, or if they're eligible for insurance, we're going to sign them up for insurance as soon as they get in the door. One of the most important priorities is to get them the insurance that they qualify for. We believe it's going to be a big step forward for our public hospitals. It's going to save a lot of money, as I said, reduce a lot of unnecessary emergency room visits and unnecessary hospitalizations. And this is part of how we create a better life for New Yorkers. We talk about fairness and what we want to do in making this the fairest big city in America. One of the hallmarks of fairness is people being able to get the help they need when they need it. And I think these ExpressCare facilities are really going to be a big step forward for all New Yorkers. Just a few words in Spanish on this. Todos los neoyorquinos nos enfermamos, pero muchos vamos a las salas de urgencias cuando no es necesario. Por eso, estamos abriendo clínicas de atención médica urgente en nuestros hospitales públicos más concurridos. Estas clínicas nos ayudarán a recibir atención más rápido, mejorando nuestra salud y la de nuestros hospitales. With that, one of the innovators of this new approach, who's bringing it here to Queens, my pleasure to introduce the CEO of Elmhurst Hospital, Israel Rocha.
Thank you, Mayor Deblasio, for everything that you have done to make this possible. You know, the mayor continues to give New York City Health and Hospitals a challenge that our hospitals should be continually to transform in a way that best serves the patients and brings higher quality. I think today's innovations is thanks to his support and his vision for a New York City hospital system that is being able to get better care to patients across New York City. Thank you for everything that you're doing to make that possible for us. And thank all our staff, our team here at Elmhurst Hospital and at across the system at Lincoln and at Jacoby, who are working to create these innovative clinics that will have new meaning for New Yorkers, so that now that they can enter all of the hospitals and they can enter our clinics, they can enter our services, and that they will be seen quickly and expeditiously, and that our system reflects their needs. It is a continuing vision of our commitment to New York City to transform our system to better meet the patients and to ensure that when you think of New York City hospitals, you think of somewhere where you can get the right care at the right time in the right setting, and that we continue to be more efficient and good financial stewards of the investment that the city puts in our hospitals. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rocha. Appreciate it very much. And now I would like to introduce the man who will be heading the Express Clinic here at Elmhurst, Dr. Phillip Fairweather.
Good morning. I have been a proud member of the Elmhurst community clinical staff for over 23 years, and I very much welcome and appreciate the kind words you've said of your experience in our emergency department. We have an incredibly dedicated group of folks downstairs who really come in every day under the most challenging circumstances at times and really bring their heart to their work every single day. Mr. Mayor, in light of the current events, we really very much appreciate your being here this morning to officiate our graduation, the graduation of ExpressCare, from a successful soft launch to the official opening. Our Elmhurst, Queens community has really made it clear that this is a worthwhile endeavor. I'm here as a representative of really a large group of people who've made this possible. Our health and hospital systems leadership, who really put the challenge to us, and I think we did well. Our IT support teams, our architectural design teams who really so masterfully created the space that you toured just a moment ago. And last but not least, of course, our emergency department clinical leadership team. Let me here collectively thank them all. The emergency department will continue to play a large role in the delivery of ExpressCare services. All of the doctors working there are board-certified clinicians who will partner closely with the emergency department to ensure that patients who come to ExpressCare but need higher levels of emergency care are expeditiously taken to the ED for appropriate level and a level of service, as that's an element of the care that you'll get at our ExpressCare that you might not get at a freestanding urgent care. The emergency department is right there, and we will make every effort to ensure that the level of service is appropriate. I should add, and I say this proudly, that there is no better place in Queens for trauma care, for stroke care, for cardiac care, for any critical care than New York City Health and Hospitals, Elmhurst. To date, we've seen over 600 patients in the first few weeks of our soft launch, and I'm really delighted, frankly, to say that I uniformly, when patients walk into that space, their faces light up uniformly, and I think at the end of their care with a 96% satisfaction rate so far, it speaks volumes to the value and the importance of the service. Allow me just to give you a flavor of how ExpressCare has worked with 3 patient anecdotes. One woman, a young senior who experienced significant ear pain, tried to go to see her primary care provider, but he had left or she had left earlier in the day. So this was an after-hours time. So she came to the emergency department. She was escorted to ExpressCare, where she was seen in an expedited fashion quite quickly. And this was the kind of care that, and the appropriate kind of issue that ExpressCare is prepared to take care of. To be clear, her problem was not life-threatening, but there was a real need to ensure that she got evaluation at the time that she felt that she needed to. We also saw a man who was in his 20s who had cut his hand and a job at his job one evening and had come to us for the repair of his injuries. He needed medical treatment. This was not the kind of care, though, that you rush to the front of the line in the emergency department. We were able to repair his laceration quickly and that night, and on his return visit for suture removal, it was a great personal pleasure to hear him say how satisfied he was with the service that he'd received on both occasions. We also saw a young mother who, in her 30s, who was a technician at a doctor's office, coincidentally, who'd been exposed to contaminated fluid and needed evaluation and quick prophylaxis to prevent possible infection transmission. She was not in pain, but was in need of expedited evaluation and treatment, and ExpressCare was perfectly suited for this kind of intervention. The one consistent truth in these cases I've presented is that these are all people who came to us after 5 p.m. at an hour, usually that primary care providers may not be available, but they understood that these were services that could be provided at a lower level of care, not in an emergency department, but again in an urgent care. And we're pleased to see that people have already established that that's a kind of service that they're happy to take advantage of. Our patients have been extremely grateful, and we very much look forward to, after this exposure, the growth in the numbers of people who will visit. So thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us and to share this occasion with us.
Thank you, Doctor. Those are definitely examples of success, and I think you're right. As the word spreads, more and more people are going to take advantage of the service that's being provided here at Elmhurst. I want to say there's been a lot of energetic support from our elected officials for this idea of providing faster service to their constituents, and I want to thank them for advocating always for Elmhurst Hospital and making sure it's getting the support it needs. I want to acknowledge and thank 2 of the representatives who serve in Albany representing people of this community, Assemblymember David Weprin and Assemblymember Jeff Aubrey. Thank you both very much. And now turning to the Queen of Queens, I want to thank her. We're in the middle here of Queens Week, and there's always a long agenda for all of the deputy mayors, all of the agency heads, pursuing an agenda that is richly dictated to us by the borough president. And this is the kind of innovation I know you believe in for your borough, and you've been fighting to make sure that the resources flow to Queens and people have access to the care they need. So my pleasure to introduce Borough President Melinda Katz.
Thank you. I do want to point out, yes, it is Queens Week, and loving it, just so you know.
Yes.
So the mayor and his deputies and the commissioners have been all around this borough over the last few days, not that they aren't the rest of the year, to be honest. We have great relationships with your commissioners and deputies, and we appreciate that. But I also appreciate the fact that you're here today despite what's going on in the city. And I think that that shows a great leadership. People want to know that you're doing it and that they see you and that you're leading it. And so I thank you for still being here today despite what's going on in the city. Many of you know that I have been working for quite a few years on figuring out where to put freestanding ERs in the borough of Queens. And the reason is because our emergency rooms are just simply overcrowded all over the city. And there's 9 working hospitals. We have many clinics that are great in the communities. But it's our emergency rooms that are consistently overcrowded. And when we lost 3 hospitals quite a few years ago now, I feel like it was yesterday, but I know it was quite a few years ago now, our emergency rooms seemed to spike in preventative health care as well as emergencies. And so I am quite impressed that H&H and this administration really foresaw the innovation that could happen by putting these almost like freestanding ERs, but urgent care clinics in the hospitals that are now standing. It just made sense. And so I'm excited by it because it will help to relieve the overcrowding in the emergency rooms. And you're right. Look, I have a 7 and a 10-year-old. If they have an earache in the middle of the night, I'm like, listen, just wait till the morning, right, if you can. Because you don't want to sit in an emergency room for 5 hours, 6 hours, and not because people aren't doing their jobs well, and not because the doctors and the volunteers and the staff is not responding amazingly. It's just there's a lot of people. And in Queens, as many of you know who have heard me speak over and over again, 190 countries, 200 languages, it is the basis of our strength here in Queens, that diversity, being the most diverse in the world. But it also presents challenges in emergencies when people walk in and can't be understood, need to find translators, and the H&H does it so well. And I do believe that this clinic is going to help alleviate some of the crowdedness in the emergency rooms. So I'm excited about this first step towards overcrowding in the emergency rooms.
Towards addressing overcrowding.
Towards addressing, not keeping it, yes, towards addressing. That's why you're the mayor and I'm borough president. But, it also relies heavily on support from our local elected officials, I've put almost $22 million into the hospitals and clinics throughout the borough of Queens. And in this hospital, much in conjunction with our Assemblyman Aubrey, whose district we're in as well, and before the finance chair, David Weprin. But it takes a lot of communication, a lot of leadership, and a lot of cooperation to face it. So Elmhurst Hospital, thank you for the work you do. We appreciate the expertise that you bring to the borough of Queens. We appreciate the challenges you face, and you do it with style and grace every time because people are happy with the services that they receive here. And I must admit, Israel, you came on board, and things just, kept moving. And we want to thank you for that leadership that you have presented here to Elmhurst. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rivera.
She's next up to bat. And as I turn to Councilmember Carlina Rivera, I want to say City Council has been really supportive of the work that we've done over the last years to turn around health and hospitals. I think everyone will remember a few years ago, the budget situation was really troubled. And a lot of policies at the federal and state level were unfortunately having a negative impact on health and hospitals. And it took a lot of work and a lot of innovation and a lot of reform to put this organization back on a firm footing. And the City Council was very supportive of making the investments necessary to bridge to this day. So, Councilmember, I want to thank you and all your colleagues. And I know how much you're a believer in these kind of innovations that allow us to serve people at the grassroots better. My pleasure to introduce the chair of the Committee on Hospitals in the City Council, Councilmember Carlina Rivera.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very happy to be here in Queens during Queens Week. And thank you to all my colleagues and for all that you do here at this hospital. I know this is the busiest emergency department in the region, and I know that as the chair of the Committee on Hospitals, and as I'm touring every single H&H facility in the city, I know how busy this one is and how hard you work to serve every single person, and the languages that walk through the door and the stories and the different socioeconomic backgrounds. And I think that that's why our public system is so important, and that's why I wanted to be sure that I was here today. And one of the biggest concerns that I see, and a question, quite frankly, that I get all the time is how are we going to respond to the transformation of healthcare? And what is the future of healthcare in this city? And I think that this is really an important model as we look towards how we can provide the best care. So we want to specifically look at how to move patients with non-life-threatening conditions out of the overburdened emergency rooms and into these primary and urgent care facilities. And I think that the network that you are building here in terms of being able to provide primary care information is really what I think Dr. Katz, his vision for H&H, is really focused on. And that's making sure that people have primary care physicians and that we're looking at how to work together as a city. So, you know, I mentioned how busy this hospital is, and clearly this urgent care clinic will ease the overcrowding in Elmhurst, where there's unfortunately really long wait times. There are long wait times, there are long waits just to get an appointment, and I think that that's become the norm, and I think it's best that we start looking at what is the better business model for H&H and for the people of New York, and it's appropriate that it starts right here in Elmhurst. So clearly this is a benefit. It's estimated it's going to help 45,000 New Yorkers over time. I see that as we continue to have more of these clinics citywide, I think this is really kind of the future of how we should provide care, especially in a non-emergency situation. And so I know it's going to be one of my focuses on the Committee on Hospitals to make sure that we're all working together. I'm looking forward to actually maybe bringing a hearing here to Elmhurst when it's appropriate, and of course with all your coordination, yes, and making sure that people can see what these facilities are like, how great the ExpressCare clinic is, and eventually looking at how do we expand that model, how it's working, and how we can change and make it better. So I want to thank you all for your dedication. I want to thank everyone here, and I'm excited for the new clinic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, we're going to take questions from the media on this announcement, and then we will turn to other topics. Anything on this announcement on the ExpressCare clinics? Anybody? I know there's a lot on their minds today. Okay, I'm going to give you a chance. Going once. Media questions, ExpressCare clinics. Going twice. Okay, let's go to other topics. Other topics. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, wondering if you've been briefed on the DOI report on the on the Commissioner of DOI. It found some fairly serious charges against him, that he might have misled City Council in testimony, that some of his investigators gave inconsistent testimony to the investigators of that probe. Just wondering what you make of it, and what steps you might or might not take in response.
I've received a briefing, but I have not read the full document. I've read a piece of it, but not the full document. I need to do that. As you know, I've been under the weather much of the last few days, so I have not had as much time. But I will do that, and after that, we'll think about what the meaning of it is. But I can't give you a conclusion yet. Other questions? Yes.
What are your thoughts on the demise of the New York Wheel project on
Sure.
Staten Island? What do you expect to happen at the site going forward? Obviously, there's been some construction. They've laid the pedestal. who's responsible for moving that, and what are you going to tell people on Staten Island who are maybe worried they might have like a half-built thing there?
Look, I don't know all the technicalities of what we're going to do to prepare the site for other development, but I'm sure we can do that on an expedited basis. It's a really important site for Staten Island. The outlet mall is opening soon. That's going to be, I think, a big boost for the economy of Staten Island. Here we have another site that can be a difference maker. And one of the things I want to do is talk to the borough president and the council members and all the elected officials and stakeholders about what would have the biggest positive impact on the future of Staten Island. What would help to build the economy and to create jobs. And look, it's unfortunate that this didn't work out, but we still have a tremendous site to work with under public control. And we're going to make it something great for Staten Island. But that's a process we now have to go through with local stakeholders. Yes?
What advice do you have for city mailroom workers who are opening mail with the possibility there could be explosive or other dangerous item in there?
To be very cautious. As you heard yesterday, NYPD has provided a lot of guidance, literally to tens of thousands of different businesses and organizations as to how to handle their mailroom operations in the times we're living in. I think the abundance of caution is the approach people should take. If anything seems out of the ordinary, as I said, if there's a chemical smell, if there's any wires showing, if something doesn't seem right, don't open the package. Alert the NYPD immediately. Get guidance from them. I think that people need to exercise caution. The packages we've seen so far have followed a very, very specific pattern, but that doesn't mean everyone will follow the exact same pattern. That doesn't mean there won't be copycats. So the best thing is to be very cautious, and if there's doubt, reach out to the NYPD immediately. Yes.
Mayor, just given that we've learned about Vice President Biden this morning and Mr. De Niro, do you have any concerns yourself about possibly being, I don't want to say a list of potential targets, but that's the best description of it. Any reason to worry that you may find yourself receiving one?
Look, my family and I a long time ago understood that we're living in a time where unfortunately some people target public figures. This is not the first time we've experienced something like this as a city or as a country. It shouldn't be that way, but it is that way. So I worry for my family always, but I know the NYPD is providing tremendous protection. And you know, it's something that it follows the same point I made about how the people of this city are reacting. I'm not going to be paralyzed by this. No one in public life should be paralyzed by this. No one in the media should be paralyzed by this. I gave a lot of credit to CNN for the fact that they kept all their programming going. They did not let this throw them off. I think that's how you defeat terrorism. We got to go about our lives. We got to show that we're resolute. So am I aware of it? Sure. Am I concerned for my family? Absolutely. But I'm also confident that really extraordinary work is done every day by the NYPD to protect us all. Thank you. Go ahead, Gloria.
Mr. Mayor, your administration testified before the City Council this week on the commercial rent bill. They raised some concerns. What do you plan to do in order to help this problem if you're not supporting the bill that's before the City Council? Do you have any other plans to deal with the problem of retail vacancy in the city?
Gloria, it's one of the thorniest problems that we face because it has to date defied a really clear public policy solution. And I've said this at a whole lot of town hall meetings to everyday New Yorkers who raised the concern. This one is challenging because the things that have been talked about historically that might work, like zoning changes, we really haven't seen the results there that we hope for. You could do a major subsidy program, but I don't think that's right given the other needs of the city and the people of the city. So, you know, what we've tried to do is work any piece of the equation that could have a positive impact. We obviously lowered the commercial rent tax for parts of Manhattan that were particularly affected. We've reduced the amount of fines that small businesses are receiving by over 40%. We're providing legal assistance to small businesses in their lease negotiations. We're helping small businesses to get tax breaks that they may deserve and other low-interest loans and other opportunities. But it's still not solving the core problem. Some of this is the changing consumer patterns that we're all experiencing. And some of this is obviously the extraordinary rental costs that we're seeing now that we didn't see in the past. But so far in the proposal that's before the City Council, the impulse is a good one, but we haven't been able to resolve that there's an approach that's actually legally sustainable and really will make a difference. The other thing I would note is the vacancy tax idea. I still think that's a very live option. That would require Albany approval. But what I like about it is, I'm going to give you an example, let's say 3 years. If a landlord keeps a storefront vacant for 3 years, that's really having a negative impact on community. They have a right to do that, even under a vacancy tax scenario, but there should be some kind of sanction. There should be some kind of penalty for doing that, and that money can be put to a positive use for the community. So that's something I'm hopeful that we can make some progress on in Albany. Who has not had one? Yes.
Mayor, there were some protests this week by homeless activists wanting you to increase the set-asides in your affordable housing program to 15% for homeless individuals. Why is that not an option for you?
I just disagree with it. I've talked about this consistently publicly, and I want to say it again. I think the affordable housing plan works for the people of the city because it's for everyone. It is meant to reach working class people, middle class people, low income people. We've heard throughout the last 5 years various demands to make the plan more about one community or another. I've said it's just not what I believe in philosophically, and I've been transparent. From the time we introduced the plan, we've talked about how it will serve a broad band of New Yorkers and how we're trying to achieve economic diversity in as many communities as possible, and I think that's what works. We do vigorously get folks who end up in shelter opportunities for affordable housing. It's been over 90,000 people in the last 5 years have benefited. So the other thing I've said to the advocates is those numbers, that actually happened. That's not theory. That happened, and that will continue to happen. But I don't believe in setting aside more of our growing supply of affordable housing for just one piece of the population. I think it has to be a broad approach.
Record number of homeless and the fact that you yourself have said there's been a shift in why people are homeless in terms of jobs and the economy.
Yes.
Why wouldn't there be an effort to help the group that some people believe are suffering the most?
Because I think the approach that, first of all, remember what we're doing for those folks. One, stopping people from becoming homeless, also in record numbers. The number of evictions has gone down markedly because of free legal services. The amount of people getting subsidies to stop them from becoming homeless has gone up. You know the history. The watershed moment was in 2011 with the cancellation by the city and the state of the Advantage program. That's really when the homeless numbers in shelter got supercharged. We've been able to recoup some of that by creating a strong subsidy effort to keep people from losing the housing they have. But again, the proof's in the pudding. If 90,000 people have benefited from affordable housing programs with the way we're approaching it now, I say that's proof that we really are serving the needs of those folks. But the bigger goal is to just expand the affordable housing options across the board for the people of this city. I don't want to send a message that the only folks who can get affordable housing are folks who end up in shelter. I think that's wrong for everyone. The message that we're sending is we're building the maximum amount of new affordable housing. We're preserving the maximum amount of affordable housing in place. The plan will ultimately reach 300,000 apartments, which means 600,000, 700,000 people will benefit. That is a better approach for solving this problem at its core.
Got time for two more.
Yeah.
Mayor, do you think it's fair to blame Trump before the completion of the investigation for the mail bombs?
I think we have to have an investigation to know exactly what happened. And I don't think, I think it's simplistic to say everything's about Donald Trump. I've said this constantly. We've got to stop talking about Donald Trump all the time. There's other things going on in our society besides the president. The hatred that's out there has existed in this country for a long time. He has given it license. He has given it permission. He has made it easier for those voices of hate to come forward. That is a fact. And it's coming from the top, and that makes it particularly unfortunate. But the hatred's been there, and we have to address it at its root. which is really all of our responsibility. So no, I don't think it's right to connect the dots so perfectly until we know all the facts. I do think it's right to say the president really should change his tone, show respect for people who have different beliefs, show respect for the news media, stop encouraging violence. That said, he will not change. I'm happy to say what he should do, and I have no illusion that he'll change. Last call, Gloria.
Mr. Mayor, I want to go back to the emails that your administration released a couple of days ago. We had a story last week that showed that your administration early on devoted a lot of time and taxpayers, salaried employees, time into making sure that the plans that you had for your national agenda were underway. Do you have any, do you want to respond to that at all? And do you have any regrets about that, considering the many needs that there are in the city and having used time and taxpayer-funded resources to focus on something that has not?
No, and I mean, I feel like we've had this discussion many, many times. I'm a little confused why folks keep bringing it up when it's been answered. I'll answer it again. Do I think that I personally made every decision as well as I could have in retrospect? No. Do I think there were mistakes in the concept and implementation? Yes. But I don't have a regret about what we were trying to achieve. Again, guys, you can ask it another 1,000 times, but I would really ask you to dig deep and be objective here. The things that affect the people of the city, so many of them are controlled in Washington and Albany. This is a fact. And if we left the political circumstance the way it was, we would continue to not get the help we need. Go across the board the issues we're talking about. The Affordable Care Act reaches 1.6 million New Yorkers. If it were gone, their lives would be made worse. The infrastructure spending that we used to get from the federal government that we don't get anymore. If the federal government had a substantial infrastructure plan, New York City would benefit greatly from it. I go down a whole list of things. Those all come back to the political debate. They all come back to what happens legislatively and what happens in elections. I think it was right to put forward an agenda and try and galvanize support for it in a way that actually could have led to change. And we had some examples that worked. I used the example of the highway bill in 2015, where mayors around the country gathered together to push for an increase in spending, and we actually got it. That's had a very positive impact on New York City. So, no, I do not regret trying to change the debate and trying to get the actions we needed on the federal level that actually could have helped the people of the city in ways we could not just do for ourselves. Last one.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on the agreement to provide unlimited sick time for 9/11
Yeah.
first responders who were in a handful of unions
Yeah.
who weren't covered. So your understanding that that's going to be brought into covering people who weren't also unionized? I know there's a population of them in the city, and they're looking for unlimited sick time. And what took so long? Why did it take so long to reach this agreement?
Look, I on the specific question of the non-unionized, I want to be careful because I have not been briefed on that approach. But our goal is to make sure people get the care they need, period. This is a situation rooted in pain. Let's say this from the beginning. The people who were affected by 9/11 need our support, period. A lot got support, but it turned out there was a group of people who weren't getting it. As that issue became clear, our goal was to settle it in a way that made sense through collective bargaining. It did take a while to work out. There were some thorny details, but we got there. Everyone said from the beginning, we got to get there. We got there. And we're going to make sure that people get the care they need. So I think it just came down to things that had to be worked through, but our intention has been to make sure people get what they need, and they will.
I was at a press conference earlier this week that sort of at the same moment as it was announced that this deal had come together, and people were still kind of angry that they felt, they shouldn't have had to hold press conferences or they shouldn't have had to ask. What would you say to the first responders who feel that way?
Well, again, from my point of view, once it became clear there was a need going unmet, we started working to fix it. So I want to make sure people get all the care they need. I'm not happy if anyone went through any kind of trouble. That's not what I would have wanted for them. This issue emerged over time. I'm thinking back over the years, it was not front and center a few years ago. When it came up, we resolved that we had to fix it, and now it has been fixed. Thanks, everyone.